gets a 4 out of 5, and they're sitting there rolling dice, or whether it's determine what it's going to get. So no, the more voices and the more input and stuff like that, the better.
Cool, thanks.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Over the last 30, 35 years of this industry, do you think there's anything that's changed that has made things better, or on the flip side, do you think that's changed that's actually taken something away that there's been that's lost?
That is a good question. There is, and I think the biggest thing that this industry has lost from the days of, say, Activision and Electronic Arts is giving credit to the authors, giving credit to the people. How many game designers, even you guys, and you guys certainly know your games, how many game designers can you actually name? Probably damn few, the Cliffy B's, the Sid Meier's, the guys who've been around a long time, and the guys who've had huge hits. But what entertainment form, what media does not say by the creators of, by the author of, by the people who brought you when they're selling a product? Only ours. Only ours. And all they'll tell you is the name of the development company. Big whoop, That's 12 guys who might never work together again as long as they live. And the fact is, game players don't seek out the names of those creators, which kind of surprises me. I mean, in comic books for years, I wrote comics back in the 70s, and before I got into it, it was very common that there would be no credits at all on comics. But still, the fans found out the names. They began to recognize art styles, and they began to recognize people and say, I know this guy. This guy is the guy who always draws Superman with the one leg. Oh, it's Wayne Boring. That's his name. Okay, suddenly we know the name. Next step was, all of a sudden, those names started appearing, and we started getting credits. And, would you go to a movie where you didn't recognize any of the stars, or you didn't recognize the director, or the screenwriter, or anybody? And I can't understand the paranoia that's infiltrated this industry. I mean, we continue to have trade shows where there's a huge problem with, people not wanting people from other companies to even come into their booth. Just God forbid, they might see a beta version of a game that you could probably see on 20 different sites right at the moment. Yet it's a very paranoid industry. They don't want to build stars because then they're afraid all they've done is created somebody they're going to have to pay more money to. And until this industry decides that we're going to, besides Shigeru Miyamoto, there are actually other people out there involved in the creation of these games, and give them credit, this industry is never going to mature the way it should. And games are going to continue to be put together by anonymous teams who are with parts that are totally replaceable. We lose an artist, we just go and hire another artist. And it's funny, but the game doesn't look like the last one that this team put out. I wonder why. Well, a different guy drew it. A different guy designed it, and a different guy programmed it. That's why it's different. So I think that's the biggest loss that this industry has faced. I mean, we went from Activision becoming a big company because suddenly we saw David Crane, Bob Whitehead, Alan Miller, these guys, and with EA, Bill Budge, even the software groups like Ozark Softscape were treated like rock bands. A picture of every member of the group would be on the back of that cover with their names and what they did. And we've lost that, and that's very, very sad. And I love it when people like Tommy Tallarico and Cliffy B, I don't care what, that they have to dye their pubes. I don't care what they have to do to get noticed, but you have to do it because in this business, if you don't make yourself a star, you will never become a star, because the EA is never going to spend a penny getting you on the Today Show or getting you anywhere else, so you got to do it yourself. Anybody else?
Oh yeah, I was curious on your opinion on like the current state of like game journalism, especially with like a lot of recent controversies. Like I'm not sure if you heard about GameStop, how they got rid of that one year. His name skips me, but and as well as I know,
a million little pieces of the game industry.
Yeah, and also Dan Shu, who is the former editor-in-chief of VGN, like how he went off and made his own blog, the Sore Thumbs blog, and he's like talking about a lot of stuff like the embargoes that game companies like do with game journalists, and like how it's like the integrity is always in question with a lot of magazines. I'm really curious about your opinion on that.
Well, as someone who oversaw the last year of tips and tricks,
right.
I can tell you,
right.
I can give you a pretty close-up view on that.
Right.
The problem is, and I think we all know that EGM is not long for this world, and they stopped putting low-end subscription cards in the magazine, which usually tells you when subscriptions run out, this magazine is dead. And the death of the game magazines has just been a terribly tragic thing. But the fact is, you can get it for free, and you can get it immediately online. And who can compete with that? With tips and tricks, we tried everything. Right up to setting up a site, which they didn't quite let us set up. But we couldn't compete with game facts, okay? A game full of, tips submitted by, Charlie Chicken Mouse, some kid who played the game. I don't know. He's got tips, so he's sending them into Game Facts, and Game Facts is going to run them. They're not going to proofread them. They're not going to spell check them or anything. They're just going to throw them up there. But that content's out there and it's free, so you can't really compete with it. How magazines cost so much money to print, the paper, you got to mail them out, you lose money on every subscription, the advertising is falling off, and Game Informer is really, I guess they're the last Indian, and the only reason they're still around is because they won't let you out of a GameStop store unless you take a subscription. If you bought a game, well, you get a subscription. It's kind of like the old bit that Life magazine used to do, where they would basically reduce the subscriptions down to where they were losing almost full cost on each copy. But then they could say to advertisers, we have 1 million readers. And that's basically how Game Informer has stayed alive, by giving away their magazine. It's kind of like the nifty nickel approach, They sell because they can advertise to people. But the fact is now that there's nobody. When Ziff Davis was running EGM, they made sure that their writers didn't go on junkets, for example. They made sure that if a company wanted to put you on a JetBlue and fly you out to them and take you to Universal Studios, whatever they needed to do to bribe you, that you didn't fall for that because they would pay. But these sites don't have the money to do that, and if a journalist gets an invitation to go on a junket and he says no, he's stupid, because somebody else is going to go and they're going to get that information, and so you can't really say no, you can't turn it down. But as a result, it's very difficult to tangle between advertising, because the sites need advertising more than the magazines even, because how else does a site make money? Everybody's coming on for free. Nobody's paying. There's no cover price there. So it's very hard. And ethics in game journalism, where let's face it, most game journalists have no training in journalism. So they never took an ethics course. They don't really understand, what that means. And so, look, we're in a hobby where Nintendo published Nintendo Power.
Exactly.
One of the most successful magazines ever. This is Nintendo telling you, here's, by the way, you want to buy our game? Here's everything about it. Everything we can take. And we're being perfectly honest, because we have no motivation to lie. But the fact that we're going to make some money off it, well, maybe. But, and fans buy it. Nintendo Power is a tremendously popular magazine. It has been for years and years and years. Do they still publish it?
Yeah, you know, I know they changed publishers recently,
Yeah,
which I'm not
they
sure if that was
somebody else.
a good thing or a bad thing on their side or not. I'm not really sure.
Well, I think it kind of demonstrates the state of magazines, though, don't it? Because the fact that Nintendo couldn't make money selling
Right,
Nintendo
exactly.
Power,
So,
that
right.
they would give it to somebody else, tells
Right.
you right there that, I mean, because that's guys writing their own reviews.
Right,
You know,
right.
there's 2 hockey games coming out. One is a Nintendo hockey game. The other is from Tecmo. Okay, and guess which one is going to get a better review? And of course, I have complete